This anime started as our main character is summoned to a new world by a goddess named Nolyn. Nolyn apologizes to our protagonist and explains that he was summoned by accident. She says that the otherworlder summoning spell randomly selects a group of chosen ones from a list. Our protagonist was excluded from this list, but somehow was still picked by the spell. This spell is dangerous enough to destroy the entire world, which is why it's forbidden. However, the nation activated it under reckless condition. Nolyn was infuriated when she heard about the activation, so she acted quickly to stop it. Unfortunately, she failed to halt the spell, which is why she brought our protagonist to this place temporarily. The real chosen ones made it all the way through to the Empire, but our protagonist realizes that he was just a mistake, and he just wants to go home. Unfortunately for him, that won't be possible. Nolyn reveals that she was so upset that she completely patched the forbidden spell, so it could never be used again. Not only is our protagonist stuck in this new world, Nolyn also reveals that he no longer has a body to return to. All he can do now is restart his new life in this new world. The problem is that he can't go to the Empire with the others because he isn't a real chosen one, and he would be treated poorly. Nolyn assures him that she will send them to a great nation instead, one that is similar to the ones found in fairy tales. Our protagonist Takumi is hesitant, but Nolyn promises to give him her blessing. Our protagonist learns that he will now be 17 years old instead of 40, like he was in his past life. Instead of being a salaryman, he now will be able to obtain one of several combat or production jobs. Takumi would like to live a peaceful life away from monsters, so he plans to choose a production job. Nolyn gently gives our boy some things to help him on his journey and sends him on his way. After crashing down to his new world, our protagonist discovers that he's no longer a hideous loser. He checks his stats to see that he really does have the goddess's blessing, but decides to keep it a secret to avoid any problems. Our hero then goes through testing some of his abilities and is delighted to find that he really is in a fantasy world. After flexing his powers, Takumi finds a tree branch. He uses his handy blacksmithing skill to turn it into a spear and acquires the woodworking skill for doing so. Takumi then uses his appraisal skill to see that there is a treasure trove of herbs nearby. After picking too many of them, he realizes that he doesn't have enough room in his bag. Luckily, he remembers that Nolyn gave him a special item box. She made it especially for him, and it provides infinite storage. Just then, some little girl begs Takumi for help, and Takumi prepares for battle. Our valiant warrior fears that Bugs Bunny might be carnivorous, but he must act quickly. The rabies-filled bunny attacks them, but Takumi quickly puts a hole in the monster. He earns the swordsmanship skill, but is shocked that a beginner like him could win his first battle. Takumi is now a warrior level 1, but he freaks out because he didn't want a combat job. The little brat explains that she's from a nearby village and happily agrees to take our protagonist there. She says that he should take the rabbit because they're delicious, so Takumi puts it in his storage. The kid is amazed by Takumi's skills, but he is shocked she shouldn't have been able to see his item box because he set it to be concealed. Meanwhile, at the Sidonia Empire, 3 students from Takumi's old world try to figure out what just happened to them. A woman explains that they are heroes, and they were summoned so they could use their powers to save this world. She introduces herself as the first empress of the Sidonia Empire named Elizabeth. While the boys are entranced by her weird-looking face, the girl named Akane receives the goddess's blessing in secret. A message tells her to trust her instincts, and Akane can immediately tell that Elizabeth cannot be trusted. Back with our protagonist, he is thanked by Molly's parents for saving her. Takumi is given permission to stay in the village, and he's ecstatic to hear that there's a vein of or nearby. This means that this place is heaven for craftsmen like Takumi and a blacksmith named Bobin. Unfortunately, this village doesn't have an inn, but Takumi is shocked when Bobin says that they can just build him a house. The villagers begin preparing for the build, and Takumi shocks everyone when he levels the ground with earth magic. Doing so also gives him the mana manipulation skill. Takumi loses a bunch of energy, but everyone is still amazed that he can use magic at all. The others then tell him not to worry because they can handle building the house from here. A while later, Takumi settles in his new home. He credits his woodworking, blacksmithing, and carpentry skills for allowing him to make some nice furniture. Takumi still doesn't like how the warrior job was selected for him, but he's relieved to change it into what he really wanted, the alchemist job. Takumi the alchemist then turns to a table with some iron or silver or in copper or that he mined earlier. He also has magic iron, or which is said to be imbued with mana. Takumi prepares to make them into ingots and remembers that it usually takes a huge furnace to accomplish. Luckily, this is a fantasy world, and Takumi can just use magic. He's delighted to finally able to do some alchemy, and he gets to work. He explains that alchemy is comprised of 5 techniques: decomposition, extraction, pulverization, synthesis, and recomposition. It's a strenuous process, but Takumi is excited by all the things he can make now. Later that night, Molly goes to visit her boy, but she is horrified to find that he's nearly a goner. After getting scolded and recovering, Takumi just goes right back to doing alchemy without taking any breaks. The only time he did even slow down is when he was being checked up on by the girls. Takumi then uses the ingots he made to create utensils and other useful tools. After all the work, his alchemist level skyrocketed to level 32. Things didn't stop there, as Takumi used his magic to help Bobin create the finest weapon he has ever created. This sent Takumi's blacksmith job all the way to level 40. He then asked Molly's father for some potions so he could teach himself how to make them. Molly's father agreed as long as Takumi promised to sell the potions to him after he learned how to make them. Takumi now mixes the herbs like a diabolical madman, but notices that the potion he makes is different from the sample he was given. He can sense mana emitting from it as well, and wonders if it's because he used water magic instead of normal water. Moments later, we find Takumi eating some random plant, and things take a painful turn. Luckily, he has the heal spell to recover, and Takumi reveals that he ate the poisonous plant on purpose. It's the quickest way to gain resistance and raise his light magic skill. It's pretty tough on his body, but he finds relief in knowing that at least he can now use purification magic. The relief is short-lived, however, as a giant pig monster appears. Takumi's dagger and spear are useless against a powerful beast, and it sends him flying. Takumi is in a really bad spot as the monster prepares for another attack, so he uses several spells to defend himself. Unfortunately, they do nothing, and Takumi desperately tries to think of a solution. Just then, he panics as he discovers that another monster is trying to attack him from behind. Turns out that the spider is injured, but that doesn't stop it from protecting Takumi. Unfortunately, the little guy pays the price for distracting the monster, and Takumi is left to defend himself again. He freaks out as nothing has worked so far, but he remembers that he has one more thing to try. Takumi's last option is to try and use his alchemy. He uses decompose on the beast, and luckily it works, making our boy victorious. Takumi limps over to the injured spider to thank it and close its wounds. He prepares to leave, but is shocked when he earns the tame skill, and the spider becomes his pet. Takumi asks if the spider wants to join him on his adventure, and the little guy happily agrees. Takumi names it Maple and is stunned when it instantly evolves. When Takumi returns to the village, everyone is amazed to see that he defeated a giant boar. They are then horrified when they see that Takumi is being attacked by a spider, but he explains that he actually tamed it. What's most impressive is that insect monsters aren't even supposed to be tame-able. While everyone feasts on the boar, Molly's father tells Takumi that he should go to a big city to sell the leftover parts of the monster for lots of money. As the guys watch the celebration, they acknowledge that their little village has gotten much livelier since Takumi showed up. However, they are sure that Takumi is destined for great things, and he's not the kind of person to stay in a small village. Elsewhere, Nolyn is glad to see that Takumi is doing well with his adventure. Another goddess wonders what Nolyn is planning, because she granted Takumi a special body and even gave him her blessing. That isn't all, as it's revealed that Nolyn also sent Takumi one entire year into the past, before the Empire activated the summoning spell. Nolyn denies doing it for any particular reason, but she obviously sees something special in our protagonist. Later, Takumi scolds Maple for a strange reason. It turns out that while our hero was asleep, his new pet used its webs to trap Takumi. The little spider apologizes, but she points out that Takumi has been really busy, so she was getting lonely. Takumi acknowledges that it's his fault because he has been too focused on potion making and other work. He apologizes to Maple and promises to take the day off so he can play with her. Little Maple couldn't be happier, but Takumi's guest is terrified. Takumi quickly assures her that Maple isn't trying to eat him alive or anything, but Martha takes a strange interest in Maple's spider silk. Moments later, Martha amazes her friends with the clothes she made using the spider silk. Takumi can't understand what all the fuss is about, so the ladies explain that the spider silk is a luxury item. It's extremely hard to find because usually the nobles buy it all up. The girls are extremely happy and they all think maple. Martha asks the little silk producer to make some thread with more elasticity, but Takumi tries to explain that maple doesn't understand anyone other than him. Martha then tries to speak to her like a child. Surprisingly, this works and Takumi can't believe that they're actually communicating. Takumi reminds Maple that they were supposed to play together, but she has a newfound purpose in life, and she tells him that she's too busy to play. This works out for our boy because he has other things to do and at least his pet is happy. Takumi thinks about how he has been in this village for a month already, but he wants to head to the city soon so he can study alchemy and become more skilled. The only problem is that he doesn't know how to tell everyone that he wants to leave because they have been so nice to him. At the forge, we see that Bobin has made a set of armor for Takumi. Bobin says that he will have to reinforce the boots for all that kicking Takumi likes to do, but Takumi reminds him that he isn't a fighter, he is a producer. This makes Bobin laugh because there isn't a single producer alive that could just walk into a forest and defeat a giant boar like Takumi did. Just then, Bunga arrives and Bobin says that it will be lonely without Takumi. Takumi has no clue what they are talking about, but it turns out that the guys knew all along that Takumi would be moving on soon. In order for his production job to grow, he must go to the city where demand will be higher, and there will be a more reliable supply of materials. As it so happens, a trader from Bolton City will be coming in the next week, and the guys have already arranged for Takumi to ride in his carriage. The guys completely understand how Takumi feels, so our hero thanks them for everything. Afterwards, Takumi goes to find Martha, who is carrying around some rabbit innards. Apparently they are the most delicious part, but they need to be processed properly to remove any diseases and parasites. Unfortunately, they don't have the tools to do so, so the innards have to be thrown away. Luckily, our boy has some skills, and he explains that he can just use purification magic. Takumi quickly purifies the disgusting-looking innards and explains that it's now safe to eat. Martha's stunned to see that he can use light magic, and she thanks him because the rabbit innards don't have to go to waste now. However, she warns Takumi that it would be better if he never showed that magic he just used to anyone. Turns out that only a few people in the entire world can use light magic. It's so rare that those with enough skill can make their living off that alone. Thankfully, no one in this village will say anything, but it wouldn't be safe to show anyone outside of the village. After that, Takumi spent the next week pouring all of his power into the village's development. He has grown to care a great deal about the villagers, and he wants to make the village as safe as he can for them to live in. He also wants to make their lives more convenient, and he wants to repay them for all they've done for him. He accomplishes this by replacing the wooden village wall with a stone wall and by using his alchemy to make taps for all the kegs. At the end of the week, the trader is shocked to see how much the village has been upgraded. Takumi is introduced to the trader named Pepik, and Pepik explains that he owns a trading company in the city. Takumi is ready to say goodbye, but first he explains to Bunga that he finished some more potions. Pepik is amazed to see this, and Takumi reveals that he had 100 of the same potion delivered to Bunga's house. Takumi wants to make sure that there's enough for the entire village, and he asks for them to be distributed to everyone in case anything happens. The trader's absolutely shocked by what he sees, and Takumi confirms that it's a healing potion he made himself. Pepik nearly loses his mind from disbelief and takes a very close look at the potion. Just then, the other villagers arrive to say farewell, and Molly says goodbye to the sleeping Maple. Martha gives Takumi a sweet-looking coat and reveals that all the ladies made it for him. That is what they use Maple's threads for, and Takumi says that he will cherish it forever. Takumi gets emotional as he thanks everyone for being so nice to him, and he says goodbye. As they all wave goodbye, Takumi thinks about how this was the first place he lived in his new world, and he will always consider it his hometown. Takumi's new friends are moved by how much the villagers care about Takumi, and they introduce themselves. Riel is the redhead, Boger is the baldy, and Heath is the blonde guy. Together they are the C-rank adventuring party known as Lion Fong. They are serving as bodyguards for Pepik, but they are bored because this area is pretty peaceful. They wouldn't mind it if some monsters appeared, but Takumi's thinking the exact opposite. The guys wonder why Takumi's holding so tightly to his bag, so Takumi reveals that his pet killer spider is inside. The guys are terrible, but Riel still wants to get a peek. He tries to call Maple out, but Takumi is shocked when Maple bashes the guy in the face. He blames Riel for his behavior, and he wonders if the incident will make Maple fear humans. Luckily, this isn't the case, as she has taken a liking to Boger. Boger is a father after all, so it's no surprise. Pepik calls on Takumi, and wonders if he will be willing to sell some of his potions. Just then, the carriage comes to a halt, and the guys wonder if a monster has appeared. Takumi is horrified when he sees a large group of goblins, but the guys tell him not to worry. Pepik also tries to assure him that it's no big deal, but he is terrified. The guys then show their expertise as they make quick work of the goblins. Some of the goblins even try to attack the carriage, but Riel takes them out. After taking the magic stones from the beasts, the rest of their trip was peaceful. 3 days later, they arrive at the city. Takumi went to the Adventurers Guild with Lion's Fong, who were going to report the success of their escort quest. Takumi also needed to register with the guild, in order to stay in the city and to register Maple as a pet. Takumi was hoping to register with an Alchemist guild, but the city doesn't have one. Hans, the receptionist, explains, however, that it's still helpful to register at the Adventurers Guild, so he can use his guild card as identification. As long as he takes just one simple quest every month, the card won't expire. In the end, Takumi decided to register with the Adventurers Guild, and he registered Maple as his pet. Later, Takumi explains to Pepik that he has 100 potions. Pepik offers him 10 silver for each healing and stamina potion, and 50 silver for each mana potion. That's a whole ton of money for our boy because it translates to about 7 million yen in his old world. Oddly, Pepik even apologizes for offering so little and explains that he's only doing so because Takumi hasn't made a name for himself yet. This is all too good to be true, so Takumi wonders if the traitor has an ulterior motive, but Pepik doesn't seem like the type to deceive others. Just then, Pepik changes the subject to ask Takumi about his living situation. He knows that Takumi plans to set himself up as a producer, so Pepik recommends that he find a home with a workshop. Takumi doesn't have enough saved up to buy a house, but Pepik reveals that if he's willing to rent, then his company can recommend a place. Things are moving too fast for Takumi, but Pepik has already called for someone to show him the house for rent. Takumi is stunned to see that the place is a mansion, and he is told that the rent is 1 gold and 50 silver a month. That's much lower than Takumi expected, so he wonders if the place is haunted. Takumi would be able to afford the rent with the money from selling his potions to Pepik, and the place even has a shed for his workshop. Takumi tells Maple that this will be their new home and he agrees to rent the giant place. As they walk through the city, Takumi can't help but wonder about the strange stench that he has smelled since arriving. He is told that it's coming from the sewers. The nobles use magical purifying devices to treat the sewage from their mansions, but the rest of the city doesn't. Magic purifying devices have to be excavated from dungeons or ancient ruins, so they are expensive. The city can't afford it, and Takumi can't believe that they don't purify the sewers at all. He is told that priests are hired to purify them periodically, but they just have to bear it for the most part. The next day, Takumi and Maple move into their new home. Our thoughtful hero already had plans to repair the city's outer walls, but that will have to wait as he has something more important to worry about, something that could mean life or death. After mixing some clay with some quartz, Takumi uses magic to shape something he is working on. He then uses some fire magic to heat the thing and adjust the temperature. He then uses space-time magic to shorten the time it needs to bake. It's a difficult process, and Takumi must even stabilize his project using alchemy. All his efforts result in just what he wanted, and he levels up several skills along with his alchemist job. Afterwards, Takumi is all tired out, but it was all worth it. It turns out that his life and death project was actually to make a toilet. Just then, Takumi hears a terrifying scream, and he's shocked to find that Maple has captured an intruder. It turns out to be Pepik, but Maple says that she was just entertaining him. Takumi says that only children would be entertained by this, but Pepik surprisingly finds his capture very soothed. After being set free, Pepik asks to use the restroom. Pepik is stunned by what he finds, and Takumi has to explain what a toilet is. That isn't all, as the alchemist also attached the magical device to it. After finishing business, the toilet uses purification to break the waste down into clean water and a small amount of inorganic material. This makes Pepik wonder if Takumi has an aptitude for light magic, but our boy remembers what Martha said. He has to keep it a secret, so he begs Pepik not to tell anyone. Pepik promises not to say anything, but he begs for Takumi to make at least another 100 of the toilets. It would be a lot of work, but Takumi is sure that he can do it if he had the materials. Pepik is certain that Takumi will need a helping hand, which is okay because our boy was planning to hire someone eventually. Pepik had something else in mind as he recommends forming a contract with a slave. Considering Takumi's talents, Pepik believes he should contract a slave bound to secrecy by magic. They could also serve as his protection and manage the mansion. Takumi is stunned and wonders why he would need to be protected. Pepik explains that Takumi has an aptitude for light magic, and that means he's considered to be chosen by God. At least that is what is said by the Church of Divine Light. The church scoops up anyone with aptitude for light magic and profits from exploiting their healing magic. Surely they would not just ignore the light magic used by Takumi's toilets. Takumi of course wonders if it's a good idea to make 100 of them, but Pepik has an idea. There is a way to get them made, and he knows how important it is that no one knows Takumi was behind it. Step 1 is making sure that Takumi gets himself a slave. However, Takumi is against using slaves. Pepik can't really understand, but Takumi would rather do it all himself if those are his only options. It's quite a task, so Pepik doesn't think it's possible, but they are interrupted when Takumi's guild card begins to glow. It's a message reminding Takumi that he must complete a quest to keep his registration. It is requested that he go to the Adventurers Guild before the deadline, and Takumi realizes that he really does need some extra hands. Pepik knows the perfect place as he takes Takumi to the Nolyn Company, the city's most trustworthy slave trader. Pepik tells him to wait at the company's entrance while he prepares a meeting, but our boy ends up wandering into a garden. There he finds a girl that he can't help but stare at. This girl coldly tells him to go home, and Takumi is stunned. The elf girl doesn't know how Takumi managed to get in here, but she is adamant that this place is not meant for children, so she insists that Takumi head back immediately. I don't know if Takumi has heard anything she's just said, as he looks completely lost in her beauty. Regardless, he proceeds with Pepik anyway, as all of this is that man's idea and meets the owner of the trading company, Mulan. Pepik explains their reason for coming here, telling the owner of Mulan that the kid beside him, Takumi, is looking for a contract slave. Pepik also mentions how reluctant Takumi is about making a slave contract, as he has never done that or even seen it happen in the land where he was born. The owner of Mulan assures Takumi that everything will be fine on both ends, as the slave is bound by the contract to give service to their master. However, according to her, in the kingdom of Barkula, slaves' rights are protected. For example, the owner must pledge to provide their slave with food, clothing, and shelter, and must never treat them like the way some cotton farmers were treated. There are many rules, such as both the master and the slave being forbidden from causing each other life-threatening harm, the master being unable to force the slave to perform an action not outlined in the contract, and many more depending on the agreement. There are also various types of slave contracts to choose from, and Pepik suggests that Takumi pick a war slave contract as that would help him hide his powers in the long run. Takumi asks for suggestions from the owner of Mulan instead. Explaining to her how busy he is as a producer, he wants someone who can manage the mansion he's living in and help handle all the housework. He also has skills that might turn him into a potential target for bad people, so he wants someone strong enough to protect him. From his detailed description, the owner of Mulan concludes that this guy wants a waifu and a bodyguard, so she suggests he get 2 slaves from here. She brings Maria to Takumi, describing her as someone who doesn't have a family and was kidnapped by bandits at a very young age. Maria is skilled in reading and writing, and she can handle general housekeeping, so Miss Owner believes she is the perfect candidate to be the manager of Takumi's mansion, aka his waifu. Takumi, becoming shy at the idea of having a hot girl in his house, gets flustered and blushes while telling Maria about his mansion, asking her to confirm if she won't have any problems handling such a big house. Takumi also casually blurts out how cute Maria is, which confuses him as he figures someone like her would have plenty of takers. Maria is overwhelmed by this compliment, but she replies to Takumi honestly, telling him that she's only good at housekeeping and cannot do anything else, like satisfying the needs of her master, which is why nobody tends to choose her. Takumi, who never had any intentions of doing so, agrees to form a contract with Maria and tells the owner of Mulan to show him the other potential candidate to be his bodyguard. Unfortunately, the lady claims that they currently don't have any war slaves, to which Maria mentions that they have Sophia available. Miss Mulan isn't pleased and reprimands Maria for speaking out of turn, telling her to quietly return to her room immediately and get her belongings ready. With her gone, Takumi asks Miss Mulan about Sophia, but she refuses to talk about her, simply stating that Sophia has problems and isn't ready for contracts yet. However, Takumi's passive skill, intuition, tells him that Sophia is going to be the right choice as his bodyguard, so he pleads with Miss Mulan to let him at least speak with her. She reluctantly takes him to Sophia's room, where they find out she's the same elf he met earlier in the garden, and possibly she's a princess, because that's the cliché anyway. Miss Mulan summarized Sophia's life story, stating that she was captured 50 years ago from her kingdom during a war, and since then she's been spending her life here. She hasn't been able to form any contracts with anyone because of a scar on her left ear, which people in this world consider to be a huge turn-off. Moreover, her right hand and left leg do not move well, but there's more. Her elemental magic and sprite magic, which are unique to the elven race, have been sealed away, ultimately making her a useless war slave. Even after hearing all of this, Takumi's intuition tells him that Sophia is the right choice, so he asks Miss Mulan to allow him to speak with Sophia. As Miss Mulan leaves the room, Sophia immediately tells Takumi not to bother wasting his time on her, as she won't be of any use to him. However, he believes otherwise and grabs her face abruptly to check her status. Discovering that she's an absolute beast with insanely strong stats, he realizes that he only needs to dispel her curse somehow and heal her limb impairment, and she'll become super strong again. To him, that seems like a great investment, so he makes up his mind and decides to form a contract with her. He promises Sophia that he will help her with her issues, which makes Mulan laugh, as she has never seen someone show interest in this problematic slave. In any case, from what she has already seen, she believes that Takumi is a good person. She entrusts Sophia to him and prepares all of the official paperwork for their contract. Maria comes to the room expressing how happy she is that Takumi is bringing Sophia with them, indicating that she's really good friends with her. Without any further ado, Miss Mulan casts the magic spell, officially forming Maria and Sophia under the contract of becoming Takumi's slaves. Mulan is happy that both girls have found a kind master who's not going to take advantage of them. Takumi takes Maria and Sophia back to his mansion, where he is immediately welcomed with a tight hug by his pet spider Maple, who has been dying to see him. Seeing a killer spider as their master's pet, both girls instantly realize how dangerous this entire journey might turn out to be. Anyway, Takumi shows them around his house and assigns each of them their own individual rooms, as there are plenty of rooms in his mansion, although they are already reluctant to accept such an offer, as all of this seems too luxurious for the likes of them. Takumi still mentions that there's also a large bath they can use, which has a magical device set up to keep it constantly clean. He suggests that both girls unpack and use it to get refreshed. While Sophia and Maria have their bath, Maria blurts out her surprise that their old master, Mulan, agreed to let her go so easily. She recounts that Mulan has never let go of any of her slaves, no matter the amount being offered to her. The fact that Takumi was able to achieve this makes her happy. Sophia, on the other hand, is suspicious of the fact that Takumi left little detail about who he was in the form he filled. She wonders if he is hiding his identity for good or for bad, wishing to know what he has in mind for them. He could use them for some workout sessions, don't you think so? When the two are done bathing, Takumi prepares dinner for them. Seeing the food, Maria is angry and disappointed that he cooked the food by himself, knowing that this was her job. This makes her feel unfulfilled and less of herself. To calm her weird-ass nerves, Takumi promises to let her cook from tomorrow, but she offers to start with cleaning up when they are done eating that night to make her happy. He agrees to her terms and asks that they sit with him for dinner. Seeing as their previous masters never let them do this, they think it is rude. However, Takumi assures them that it isn't and asks that they join him. Later that day, he heads to Pepik Company to pick up an item he had asked Pepik to get for him. After leaving there, he comes across a church and is surprised that he had never seen it before. He walks in to find a magnificent statue of Lady Nolyn there. Without hesitation, he gets on his knees to pray to her. After thanking her for blessing him, he remembers that the people of Sidonia always bad-mouthed her, and wondered why they did so. At that moment, she reveals herself to him in a bid to answer his question. Seeing her makes him lose his non-existent cool. He begins to squabble like a little girl at a dance concert. Ignoring his childish demeanor, she reveals that she has nothing to do with the church in Sidonia. Furthermore, she lets him know about the existence of two religions in this world, with two churches. The first church, called the Church of Creation, worship Lady Nolyn, while the second, the Church of Divine Light, worship an unknown god. Sidonia had forcefully made people believe in the god of the Church of Divine Light, ignoring Lady Nolyn. Even with all of this, she chose not to interfere. The fact that she chose to become ignorant had led to the Sidonians accidentally summoning him from another world. Out of guilt, Lady Nolyn had decided to give him a super blessing. However, just then, she warns him that he would slowly lose the part of the blessing that helped him grow and meet people easily. Hearing this, Takumi suddenly realized that he indeed had this blessing, considering how easy it was for him when he met people or went to places. She leaves him to sort things out for himself and not be a babysitter-needing coward. Thankfully, Takumi realizes just how cooked he is from now on. 1 year later, in the kingdom of Sidonia, The king is curious to know about the training of the 3 heroes they summoned using the evil summoning spell. He hopes they can become powerful enough to serve his needs. Although the trio had their doubts about this new world, they seem to have been convinced after being persuaded by the beautiful Lady Elizabeth. What a bunch of heroic pervs. One would think the 3 idiots are progressing in training, but they can't even take down one large-sized instructor. Just when we thought we've seen the worst, one of them, who shockingly happens to be a girl, is about to leave the training when Lady Elizabeth informs her about how necessary it is to train. Turning around, she is suspicious of Lady Elizabeth's true intentions. Back at Takumi's home, he arrives and ends up spilling over the stuff he got. Sophia tries to pick up the item he got from Pepik, but he hurriedly uses his item box magic to hide it. Before he did this, she had seen a magic seal on it and found it suspicious that he would hide it from them. Before he would get drowned in embarrassment, he asks to be left alone while he heads to his workshop. When he leaves, Sophia continues to wonder about what he could be hiding. She sneaks to the workshop to spy on him and finds him cutting himself with a knife soaked in potion. At first glance, he looks like a junkie. After cutting himself, he hurriedly heals the wounds and is left screaming like a crybaby. While trying to do it once again, he recounts how cruel Maria was for suggesting this to him. On hearing Maria's name, Sophia charges in. Seeking to know what he plans to do with Maria, she threatens to harm him if anything happens to Maria. Before she could get the chance to complete her threat, he passes out. When this happens, Takumi figures out that she is exhausted. He heals the injury in her hand, and this helps him to level up like he wanted. Leveling up gave him the power to perform extra heal, a spell that he could use to get rid of Sophia's spell. Without wasting much time, he performs the spell on her and her left ear regains its original form. When Sophia wakes up, she wonders why she feels so light. Immediately, she asks Maria to run away, informing her that Takumi wishes to harm her. However, Maria informs her that Takumi had cured her of her curse. She hands her a mirror to check her ear, and the idiot realizes just how wrong she was all along. Later that evening, she thanks Takumi, and he explains why he had mentioned Maria's name earlier. After hearing his explanation, Sophia falls on her knees and swears her undying loyalty to him. Watching this happen, Lady Nolyn is very pleased. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.